been great for her to decide that her time with this administration of this White House is over effective today.
Right, and Kate, I just want to make the point, right, as you say, she's been loyal. This is the, she could have had a much longer a job, et cetera, with this family, right? She is severing those ties, and she is doing so, it's very clear, right, because of how the president has handled his election loss.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a very contentious few months for Stephanie Grisham. She bounced to the West Wing, as we all saw. Then Mark Meadows came in, and all of a sudden she was back in the East Wing with Melania Trump. There have been lots of back and forth between the East and West Wing. She wants to spend more time with her family. Again, there are all those reasons. However, I think it's really important to emphasize, with just 2 weeks left, the significance of this moment today, of watching what we all watch play out on television, and think that senior administration officials are watching it too. Our Kevin Litvak is reporting there are others in the West Wing, aides who are considering, this is it, this is my resignation, this could be what prompts it. Stephanie Grisham, of course, being the first one to actually make that decision, submit her letter to the First Lady, who sources tell me has accepted the resignation, and that it is taking part right away.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. And as Kate and I are speaking, you see protesters, police continuing to move them back. Brian Todd explaining a little bit of what we've seen here, this perimeter, and you can see a continued movement here as they are trying to disperse these protesters and members of this mob that are still gathered there. I want to bring in Josh Campbell. He's a former FBI special agent and our security correspondent. And Josh, I have a lot to ask you from just the reporting we just had. First of all, what Caitlin was saying, right? That the vice president spoke to, the leaders of the House, leaders of the Senate, to the Department of Justice, to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to the Defense Secretary, purposely, not including that he talked to the president, but he hasn't even talked to the president, is what we're supposed to take away from this. How significant is this? The vice president appears to be the one running things.
Yeah, it's certainly concerning. I mean, any type of calamity, you're going to need the National Command Authority in the United States to not only have visibility and have, their finger on the pulse of what is going on, but they also need to be in a position to make decisions in order to protect property, to protect lives. And so that is striking to hear that the Vice President himself is the one who is potentially taking upon himself to reach out to these agencies to remain in contact and to possibly make decisions, which raises this larger question: where is President Donald Trump? You think about how this day started. It began with President Trump and his associates at a rally, whipping up fear among an angry crowd, and the day is ending with multiple law enforcement officers now injured, a woman shot after this pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. We did hear some tepid responses from the president after that, but still, I have to tell you, in the law enforcement world, when you're trying to deal with the mob, there are two main overarching things you need to deal with. There's the tactical aspect on the ground. You have law enforcement, as we see on our screen right now, trying to push a crowd back. They'll try to identify any type of agitators in order to try to cull them, to lower the temperature. But there's also the larger issue, Aaron, and that is what is motivating a violent mob to exist to begin with, and that goes back to President Trump, who has continued to whip up fear. Even in his call for these folks to go home, he still says that this election was stolen, which is what is driving their anger to begin.
And there's a lot that we don't know, Josh, in terms of sort of the exact timeline of who called whom and at what point. But one thing we do know, right, is that law enforcement was not prepared for what happened. Okay, we all saw that happen, and then we have to figure out who called whom and what caused delays, etc. Tell me what you know.
Well, there are a lot of questions for the United States Capitol Police at this hour and some of the other law enforcement in Washington, D.C. And it pains me to say that because I can tell you, having worked for the Capitol Police, they're among some of the most highly trained, the most highly effective. Anyone in and around Washington, D.C. knows about their presence. I mean, you see Capitol Police officers staged on Independence, staged on Constitution, constantly looking outward for threats in order to protect that building. And for them to see this crowd coming and essentially there was a period of time today where we saw this crowd storming the stairs, storming the building. You didn't see a law enforcement presence. There are going to be a lot of people needing to answer questions about what type of threat assessment was done, and then how do you respond to that? And as our colleague Alex Marquardt was mentioning earlier, you can't help but reflect upon, as you look at these images compared to what we saw over the summer with some of these protests during the Black Lives Matter protests, where you saw law enforcement very forcefully out there. You didn't see that today, and that allowed these rioters, a group of this mob, to come into this building and to cause destruction. A lot of unanswered questions right there for law enforcement.
Okay, thank you, Josh, and Josh, obviously we're gonna keep coming back to you. I wanna go to Evan Perez, our senior justice correspondent. So Evan, on these points, what do you know about why it took so long, and frankly hours, and we've all seen these videos that are embarrassing, right, of just, you know, there wasn't any police presence, or when there was, it was one person and people just rushed on by. Why did it take so long to get this under control?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the Capitol Police were overwhelmed and they should have been well prepared. I think from what I've talked, from talking to law enforcement officials, Aaron, I can tell you that there was a lot of conversations that were going on in the days before today's rally, and according to the people I've been talking to, according to the law enforcement officials I've been talking to, the Capitol Police, the Metropolitan Police here in Washington, everybody said that they were ready, that they were prepared. But there's also this overhang of what happened over the summer. And so there was a little bit of a concern about having too muscular a presence on the streets. So that appears to have played a role in what was frankly just an inadequate response, an inadequate preparation. I can tell you, you know, I run through the Capitol multiple times a week. During the summer when the George Floyd protests were going on, or even during the time that they were getting ready to confirm the Supreme Court justice, there was a lot more heavy police presence. You couldn't get close to the building. Today, there was none of that. And so the contrast was striking. And so I think in the coming days, we're going to hear a little bit more finger pointing as to exactly what went wrong here. What I'm told is that the federal agencies, the Justice Department agencies that were coordinating a lot of this, you know, they can't just go to the Capitol because that is a separate branch of government. They need to be asked to go there. And by the time they got asked to go, the mob was already inside the building. That's what happened today. And so there are going to be a lot of recommendations. It's not clear who is supposed to make that request, when that request should have been made. They can't just send the National Guard. They have to be requested.
I mean, look, you know, it has exposed, I think, a lot of things that you wouldn't want any foe of this country to see exposed. It has all been painfully exposed today. But Evan, since you, you know the Justice Department so well, do you have any sense of really who's running things? I say this in the context of the Vice President's office has now said, you know, who he was in touch with. And it's basically he who has been running everything today, right? Talking to the Joint Chiefs, talking to the Defense Department, talking to the Department of Justice. What can you add to that? Do you have any better sense of, you know, is Pence really the one who ran things today?
It appears that he is, first of all, the one who's running the government. The president has stopped being president some time ago. So that much is clear, right? That's been clear for